Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. So last class, we saw verse number 22. And in that verse, Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi pointed out that the so-called God realization is not possible without self-realization. Real Ishvara-darshanam is never possible without ātmā-darshanam. The reason is, Ishvara is Atma. So this is the central teaching of all the Upanishads. Both in Kenopanishad and in Brihadaranyaka, it is said, Tadeva Brahma Tvam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam Upasate. Whatever form of God you objectify, either external to your body or within your mind, in the height of meditation, all those forms of God are not absolutely real. We do not say they do not exist. We don't say it is non-existent. All that we say is that it is vyavaharika satyam. It is only empirical reality or transactional reality. If God came in front of you, outside your body, and that God you saw, that is a vyapara, that is a vyavaharika. That's a transaction of your eye. And that reality is only empirical reality, vyavaharika satyam. If God gave you darshanam in your mind during meditation, that God experience inside your mind is pratibhādika satyam. Illusory. Any experienced God is not paramarthikam. It is not absolute. So both vyavaharika satyam and pratibhādika satyam are together called mithya. In Vedantic teaching, both are mithya only, illusion only. And the word he uses, Bhagavan uses, is manasika ikshanam. Upanishad says, Nedam yadidam upasate. Whatever you worship, whatever you see, na idam. Yadidam upasate, that which you worship, you see, that it is not. It is not Brahman. It is not the ultimate absolute reality. Real God being yourself, how can you objectify God? If you want to know God, try to know yourself. This is the loud and clear message. Therefore, Atmadarshanam is abiding in your own essential nature. Abide in that knowledge. Now continuing, verse number 23. ātmānmīkṣeta paraṁ prapaśyet. ātmānmīkṣeta paraṁ prapaśyet. ityāgamokteḥ sulabho na bhāvaḥ. ityāgamokteḥ sulabho na bhāvaḥ nātmaiva dṛśyo yadi katheśe nātmaiva dṛśyo yadi katheśe svayam tadannībhavanaṁ tadīkṣā svayam tadannībhavanaṁ tadīkṣā. Together. ātmānmīkṣeta paraṁ prapaśyet ityāgamokteḥ sulabho na bhāvaḥ nātmaiva dṛśyo yadi katheśe svayam tadannībhavanaṁ tadīkṣā. So almost the same idea as we saw in verse 22, that is now presented in a different language. It is to show that there is no other real God darshanam, no real God darshanam other than the understanding, other than the self-knowledge. There is no real Ishvara Darshana. Bhagavan does not negate the Vyavaharika Devata Darshanam. Nobody says you did not have that experience. No. He does not dispute any reported anecdotes of the experience of bhaktas. What Ramana Maharshi says is that Ishvara who came, gave darshanam, and then went away, cannot be absolutely real. That's all. We see this world solidly. Every one of us is experiencing this world solid right in front of us. But Vedanta rejects this tangible world as mithya. In the same way, if God were to come in this world and appear in front of you, that also has to be mithya. Then what is real God? Vedanta emphasizes that real God is not tangible, cannot be seen, it cannot be heard. It is intangible. Real God is asabdam, asparsham, arupam, arasam, agandham. Imperceptible, not available for the senses. If you saw it, it is not God. If you heard it, it's not God. God is beyond all perceptions. Very difficult to assimilate this idea, especially to staunch Saguna Bhaktas. They are attached to visible God and are doing so many sadhanas for that vision. They want to have that vision. It is also possible. Okay? But Bhagavan, in no unequivocal terms, says that such seen God is not the real God. That's all. He does not dispute you do not have that experience. In the Upanishads, there is an expression: if you want to know Brahman, don't look for Brahman as a new thing that you should realize. Then what should you do? Know your own real nature. Your own true real nature is Brahman. That's all. We are not introducing anything new. The available subject matter is myself, and what we are trying here is to know my real nature. That's it. So Ramana Maharshi says, understand your own real nature ātmānmīkṣeta. Inquire, ask yourself, am I the physical body? Am I the mind? Am I the sense organs? Am I someone different from all of them? If I am different, what or who am I? What is the real nature? This inquiry alone, this vichara alone, that is what is needed. That's all. Therefore, ātmānmīkṣeta. So you explore, inquire into, look into your real nature. That's it. The beauty here is, the day you understand your real nature, paraṁ prapaśyet, you have realized param, the supreme. The moment, the instant you understand your real nature, you have realized that Ishvara, God. If someone says, I have realized my own nature, but now I am working to realize God. Someone were to say that, that means he does not get both. He has not realized himself, nor is he realizing God. Scriptures very definitely, clearly say, know yourself, you will know God. Who says, ātmānmīkṣeta paraṁ prapaśyet? Bhagavan says. Not only Bhagavan, what does he say? Ityāgamokteḥ. He says, all scriptures say this. Agama. So he quotes the scriptures here to underscore his point. This is his experience, but to underscore his experience that he is sharing with all of us, he is quoting scriptures also. So here the word agama means the Vedas. They are called agama because they are handed down. Guru Shishya paramparena agacchati iti agama. So agamo kritehe bhavaḥ na sulabho. One cannot easily understand bhavaḥ, āgamokteḥ bhavaḥ na sulabho. The significance of this statement, one cannot easily understand. Many people do not understand the significance of the statement, know yourself, you will know God. We need to understand that clearly. A seer can see only the seen and never the seer. God can never be seen as an object. I am the seer. I can see everything else, but I cannot see myself. The eye cannot see itself. The seer cannot see itself. If we say God can never be seen, if you put these two together, you are that God. So, self-realization is God realization. It sounds so simple, but people have difficulty in understanding this simple fact. But Upanishads say that. Where is it said? For example, in Mundakopanishad, Hiranmaye pare koshe virajam brahmanishkalam tat shubram jyotisham jyotihi tat yadatma vido viduhu. The last fourth quarter. Tad yad ātmāvido viduhu. The knowers of the self know God or Brahman. So self-knowledge is God knowledge. So this is what is said in the Upanishad, and that is what Bhagavan is saying here also. So that knowledge is not like knowing an object. So when we talk about knowledge, it is not an objective knowledge. You may have a laptop in front of you, or an iPad, or whatever device that you have in front of you with which you are in this Zoom call. Okay, that object is seen as an object. I know laptop. That is an objective knowledge. That way, you cannot know yourself. You cannot know God that way. You have to drop the very knowerhood. Knowing as an object, not possible. Just be. Knowing God is being God. Now what should I do? I am interested in God realization, and with this new equation, I know the vision of God is ātmādarshanam, and so my effort should be towards vision of the self. Okay, but when I start working for knowing myself, I get into the problem. How to see myself, how to know myself. Therefore, Ramana Maharshi says, ātmānmīkṣeta na dṛśyo. I am now interested in the vision of the self for the sake of God vision. When I work for the vision of the self, the Guru comes and says, Atma na dṛśyo. You cannot see the self. So what does that mean? Working for God vision and self vision, both are foolish. God is equal to the self and self is never seen. So God is never seen. You got to put all these logical statements together. If someone approaches a Mahatma and asks, have you seen God? That Mahatma is in big trouble. If the answer is yes, if something has been seen, that is not the truth. If the answer is no, what good is this Mahatma? What good is this study of Vedanta? So Bhagavan says here, Atma eva na dṛśyo. Yadi, when Atma itself cannot be objectified, katheśe kata, what to talk about God? How are you going to objectify God? So you cannot objectify Ishvara also. Of course, you have to be careful about which Ishvara we are talking about. We cannot objectify the paramarthika Ishvara. Okay? Suppose someone says, I am not interested in the paramarthika Ishvara, but what I want is vyavaharika Ishvara. My Ishta Devata I want to see. We say yes, yes. That Ishvara can be seen. For that, you have to do a lot of tapas, and the scriptures have prescribed upasanas and tell you how to have that sakshatkara. That's possible. You want to see Ganesha, Lakshmi, Saraswati, or Vishnu? The Upasana Khanda in the Vedas tell you how to do that. It's all there. But that Sakshatkara Ishvara cannot give you liberation. That's the point here. Without Aham Brahmasmi, moksha is impossible. So this is ityāgamokteḥ. This is what is said in the Vedas. Then what is realization? He says, svayam tadannībhavanaṁ tadīkṣā. So Atmadarshanam is tadīkṣā, is tadannībhavanam, is resolving the ahankara, the limitation. The resolution of notion of limitation is Atmadarshanam. When I say I am a man, the man attributes are superimposed on I, the consciousness, and am, the existence. I is the consciousness, am is the existence, and on that you superimpose the manhood. Decouple that. And all the limitations of manhood, all that belongs to Ahankara, not to me. This elimination of the attributes is what is called annībhavanam. Become food for the Lord. Just like if you are eating food and the food is on the plate, your hunger will not be satiated. When the food goes from the plate into you and becomes one with you, there is satisfaction, there is ananda. Another good example is sleep. If you ask me how to experience sleep, and I say you see the sleep. Keeping awake, how can you see sleep? To experience real sleep, you should be swallowed into the sleep. Otherwise, there is no question of experiencing the sleep, seeing the sleep. You have to be sucked into that sleep. That's it. Another nice example is, if you want to get out of dream, we say, see the waker. What does it mean? It means drop all the notions in the dream and become the waker. That's the only way. In the same way, swallow the notion of being a man or a woman or this or that. Just be I am. Be that sat and chit. That is what it is. That is the point. Drop all notions in the dream. Become the waker. The same way. Whatever I am plus whatever addition, drop that. Just I am. I alone is there. That is Advaitam. That is Atmadarshanam. Resolution of Ahankara, destruction of ego is Atmadarshanam. This is not a physical event, it is an intellectual understanding. See Ahankara as Mithya. So many illusions you see. You experience those, but you see them as just an illusion. Then you see the truth. So when you hear all this, a simple question comes to mind. All the time, Shastra says, the Guru says, Paramatma, Supreme Self, is in the heart of all beings. But what does he do there? Does he do anything there, or he just sits there, doing absolutely nothing? Tell me what he does. And to see him, what should I do? So it is said in the next verse. Let us read verse number 24. Dhiye prakāṣaṁ paramo vitīrya. Dhiye prakāṣaṁ paramo vitīrya. Svayam dhiyo'ntaḥ pravibhāti guptaḥ. Svayam dhiyo'ntaḥ pravibhāti guptaḥ. Dhiyaṁ paravatya dhiyo'nte'tra. Dhiyaṁ paravatya dhiyo'nte'tra. saṁyojanānneśvara-dṛtiṣṭaranyā. saṁyojanānneśvara-dṛtiṣṭaranyā. Together. Dhiye prakāṣaṁ paramo vitīrya. Svayam dhiyo'ntaḥ pravibhāti guptaḥ. Dhiyaṁ paravatya dhiyo'nte'tra. saṁyojanānneśvara-dṛtiṣṭaranyā. Self-realization does not require knowing the self as something new, as I said a little while ago, because the self as consciousness is ever experienced by us. Experiencing anything else requires effort. We need to use an instrument. If I have to see a picture hanging on the wall, it is a process. Let us say there is a picture to my left. Gurudev's picture is there on the wall. And if I have to see that picture, I have to turn my head to my left. Then I see the picture. It is a process that takes place in space and in time. It requires effort. Every object in the world is experienced that way only. I have to put forth some effort. The self, on the other hand, is the only thing that is ever experienced without any effort. It's ever experienced as consciousness, because of which alone I am able to say I am a conscious being. It is because of that consciousness I am conscious of the surroundings. It is ever experienced. No instrument is required. No process is needed. Do you know you are there? Do you need any effort to know that you are there? Any time required? If I ask you, do you know you are there? Yes, wait a minute, let me think about it. No. No time is required to experience Atma. Even though Atma is ever experienced as consciousness, mind is required to turn the attention to the ever experienced Atma. The problem is, this stupid mind of ours is always turned outward. All that Vedanta is asking is, turn your attention first to the ever experienced Atma by asking you the question, are you a conscious being or not? So to answer the question, you have to turn your attention to yourself and claim that you are a conscious being. When you make that claim that I am a conscious being, the mind is not illumining the consciousness because consciousness is ever evident. The mind is not required to illumine the consciousness. Mind is just needed to turn your attention. You use the intellect to do all this. Mind and intellect needed to turn your attention to the ever evident consciousness. Once I turn my attention to that fact that I am a conscious being, the body is sentient and the body has consciousness, then Shastra is needed to talk about the nature of that consciousness. Mind is not needed to experience the consciousness. Shastra is not needed to experience the consciousness. Because consciousness is ever experience. It is self-shining. You don't need another consciousness. So what is the role of the mind? Mind is just required to turn your attention to the ever experienced consciousness. Shastra is needed to know that Chidabhasa, the reflected consciousness, enlivens the inert mind. And then I need to know the nature of that consciousness. When I turn my attention to the consciousness, and when I study the Shastra, I come to know that this ever experienced consciousness is not part, property, or product of the body. It is an independent entity. It pervades, illumines the body, not limited by the limitations of the body, survives the body. When I say body, this is not only the physical body, and the subtle body also. So it survives when all that is gone. Not transacting does not mean non-existent. When these bodies are gone, that consciousness does not have the medium to transact. Not that it is not there. So this ever experienced consciousness exists all the time, and that I am. So this is the process of self-inquiry. Therefore, Bhagavan says, Paramaha, the Supreme God, is none other than the Atma, which is none other than the ever experienced consciousness. Vitīrya, it lends prakāṣaṁ, it shines. It lends consciousness, it lends sentience, it lends life, it enlivens. Distributed consciousness is life. That consciousness gets distributed all over. The original pure consciousness, Chit, we do not call life, but Chidabhasa. The reflected consciousness, which goes out and enlivens all beings, we call life. Sunlight is there, the original sunlight is there, and it falls on a mirror and it shines. Even though by itself, the mirror does not have a shine, only when light falls on it. And then it is able to shine everything else. In the same way, the mind is inert by itself. With the touch of the reflected consciousness, it becomes sentient. It becomes alive. So paramaha, Atma lends prakāṣaṁ to dhiye, to buddhi. Buddhi, intellect, mind, intellect, that is also inner. But this touch of consciousness enlivens that. That Atma being all-pervading is very much there, where the mind is. So svayam guptaḥ, it remains hidden as it were. Dhiyo'ntaḥ, within the mind. That Atma, the pure consciousness, pravibhāti, remains shining. Just like the battery, the cells in a flashlight that energizes the bulb to give out the light. And with that, you see all objects that are otherwise in the dark. But can you see that cell battery? In the same way, the Atma, the pure consciousness, remains hidden, just like those cells. But sitting there, it enlivens all inert things. Atma illumines the mind. And the mind illumines the world. Enlivens the mind, illumines the mind. And then the mind is able to, the intellect, then it is able to know. So that Atma is behind the mind, remains hidden as though. That we have to add. Another example. How is it hidden? Just like how the movie pictures hide the screen in the cinema theater. The screen is always experienced by the moviegoers, because if the screen were not there, the images cannot be projected on it. Yet, nobody sees the screen. We just see the images that are projected on it. Everyone sees the image only. So the screen is ever experienced, but yet never noticed. It is not experienced as such. So many examples can be given. Another simple example is space. We experience space all the time, but we are not aware of its presence. All objects are accommodated in space. We see the objects, but not the space. Similarly, all those objects are seen in the light. There were no light. Everything was dark. You won't see any of the objects. You enter a dark room. Room is dark. So many objects are there. The room is dark. You do not see the objects there. First thing you enter the room, you need to flip the switch. The light comes and then you will see everything. When you see all the objects, you don't see the light. The samanya, only the particularities are seen. The space that is there everywhere, that is not seen. That is where we need to turn the attention. In the same way, this consciousness Chet is there, behind everything, enlivening everything. But we don't focus that. That is the Atma. How to discover that Atma? The self. So self-knowledge is noticing, focusing, paying attention to that ever-experienced consciousness. That is stage one. That's the first step. The second stage, with the help of scriptures, I have to negate all the limitations attached to the ever-experienced consciousness. That consciousness is free of all limitations. Now I take that and on that superimpose so many limitations. I have to negate all that. That ever-experienced consciousness is free of all limitations. And that is done through the help of Shastras. Once you know that, once you do that, what you have is self-knowledge. It's not a new experience. It is a new information regarding the ever-experienced consciousness. That's it. So, Ramana Maharshi says, dhiyaṁ paravartya, turn your attention away from all inert things, body, mind, thoughts, away from the silence also. Turn your attention to the ever-experienced consciousness. That consciousness which illumines the silence, the absence, the thoughts, the mind, and the body. That Atma, that consciousness, is not affected by any of the experiences that it illumines. Various objects that are there in the space, does it affect the space? No, space is untouched, uncontaminated. Can pollute the air, but not the space. Space is not affected. In the same way, this Atma, this consciousness that enlivens everything, in which light you experience everything, that never gets touched, tainted by any of those experiences. Therefore, you going through those experiences, do not be carried away by all those experiences. So this is the new information that comes to your understanding. It is not a new experience. Shastra gives this new information. And this has to be received by the intellect alone. Intellect alone has that capacity. Intellect is not required to experience the Atma, because Atma is pravibhāti, ever shining, self-evident. But intellect is required to turn your attention from all that. Pravibhāti means ever existent, and guptaḥ, hidden, never paid attention to. That way consciousness is hidden. So, dhiyaṁ paravartya, turn your attention away from the world. And then you dhiyo'ntaḥ, turn your attention, bring your mind ātmānmīkṣeta, there, in the hridaya, in the heart. In the hridaya guhayam, in the core of the heart, antakarana, within the mind. Track out that I thought. Then, saṁyojanānneśvara-dṛtiṣṭaranyā, connect your buddhi to the ever-experienced consciousness, join with consciousness, That alone is na anya ishvara drishtihi. That is Ishvara darshan. Deliberate, conscious attentions to consciousness and nothing else. Na anya. That is God vision. That is Ishvara darshan. All the other Ishvara darshanams that are described in the Puranas, not even considered great. Before coming to Vedanta, they are considered fantastic. No doubt they inspire devotees. No problem with that. Read those Puranas. If you want those experiences, go ahead, let them be an inspiration. But finally, you need to come to this Ishvara Darshanam as your own self. But Bhagwan here very clearly says, they are not Ishvara Darshanam at all. Because they will not liberate you. Having that vyavaharika, pratibhādika, Ishvara Darshanam will not liberate you. Liberating Ishvara Darshanam is changing your understanding of yourself. That is Atma Darshanam, and that too not as an object, but as ātmānmīkṣeta, abidance in the self. This alone is Ishvara Darshanam. Na anya Ishvara-dṛtiṣṭaranyā. Other than this, there is no other real Ishvara Darshanam. The real one is turning your attention to your real I. That is Saddarsanam. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shante Shante Shantehi. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.